Rain might not be the first Beatles song that comes to mind when you think of their hits, but for real fans, it's one of their most interesting and underrated tracks. Released as the B-side to Paperback Writer in 1966, Rain shows just how far the Beatles were willing to go to mess with the sound of pop music. It's trippy, heavy, and full of the kind of experimental stuff that set them apart from other bands at the time. At its core, Rain is about perspective. The lyrics, mostly written by John Lennon, though Paul McCartney did say he helped a little, use rain as a metaphor for your state of mind. Lennon was knee-deep in his LSD phase, and the song reflects that whole mindset of seeing the world differently depending on your mood or, whatever substances you've been indulging in. The line, "Can you hear me? That when it rains and shines, it's just a state of mind," sums it up perfectly. It's like, the weather doesn't matter, it's how you feel about it that counts. This idea of altered perception is something they dig into more on Revolver with tracks like I'm Only Sleeping, but Rain was one of the first places where they really started to play around with these themes. It was a signal that the Beatles were leaving the pop world behind and diving headfirst into more psychedelic, mind-bending territory. Musically, Rain is just as interesting. One of the coolest tricks they used was recording the rhythm track at a fast tempo and then slowing the tape down. This gave the whole song a heavier, more laid-back feel. Instead of sounding like a typical rock track, it has this thick, almost sluggish vibe that makes it stand out. The slowed-down rhythm creates a spacey atmosphere that was way ahead of its time for a pop band. And Ringo's drumming on the song is incredible. The slower tempo makes the drums sound massive, almost like they're being played in a canyon or something. Ringo himself has said this is one of his favorite performances. He was really in the zone on this one, especially with his trick of starting drum breaks on the hi-hat, which wasn't typical back then. You can tell he was locked in with McCartney's bass. And that combination gives the song a driving, powerful groove. Then there's the backwards vocals. This was one of those happy accidents that turned into something brilliant. Lennon was at home, stoned, listening to the track on his reel-to-reel player, and he put the tape on backward by mistake. He loved how it sounded and rushed back to the studio to tell the others. That's how we got the trippy reversed vocals at the end of the song. It's a weird effect, but it adds this otherworldly vibe that fits perfectly with the whole concept of shifting perceptions. Another cool thing about Rain is that it was part of the Beatles' early foray into music videos. By 1966, they were tired of touring and dealing with the insane crowds everywhere they went, so they decided to film promo clips instead of doing live TV performances. This was pretty much the birth of the modern music video, and it saved them a lot of hassle. They shot these little films for Rain and Paperback Writer, and sent them out to TV shows instead of showing up in person. Michael Lindsay Hogg directed the clips, and they filmed some of the footage at Chiswick House in London. For Rain, they had these outdoor shots of the band hanging around a tree while kids played in the background. It's simple, but it worked. These clips were basically the first music videos as we know them, and it was a game changer for how bands promoted their music. Nowadays, it's standard practice, but back then, the Beatles were breaking new ground. In the end, Rain is one of those tracks that shows the Beatles at their most adventurous. They were never content to just sit back and ride on their success. They were always looking for new ways to stretch what pop music could do. And with Rain, they nailed it. Whether you're into it for the trippy lyrics, the heavy rhythm, or the backward vocals, it's a song that still sounds fresh all these years later.